Have you ever tried to wake up a dreamer while they were still dreaming? It doesn't matter how loudly you speak, how perfectly you explain, how desperately you want them to see. A dreamer protects the dream, not the truth. And you, without realizing it, keep knocking on a door that was never designed to open. Not for you, not yet. Some people do not refuse to understand you. They are simply unable to. They are living inside a movie, and it isn't yours. They are staring at their script, reciting their lines, defending their illusions, while you stand outside the theater trying to introduce them to a bigger universe. Why do we do this? Why do we spill our soul onto a floor that was never meant to hold us? Because somewhere inside us there is a hope that if we just say it right, if we just explain it one more time, if we just bleed a little more honestly, someone will finally see us. What a strange addiction. The human need to be understood. We stretch our spirit into shapes it was never meant to bend into. And then we wonder why we feel tired, broken, unanchored. You try to prove your heart to someone who cannot see hearts. You try to prove reality to someone who worships their illusion. And you call it communication. But it feels more like spiritual CPR. And the patient does not want to wake up. Understand this. There are minds built like open sky, and minds locked like underground vaults. You cannot pour sunlight into a safe. You cannot hand truth to someone who came only to argue. They don't hear you. They defend themselves. Their ears are not instruments of understanding. They are shields. Their attention is not listening. It is waiting to attack. And every time you try again, you are not communicating. You are pleading for recognition. In a place where recognition does not exist, I will tell you something unsettling. Not everyone is meant to understand you. Not everyone has earned access to your inner world, and the world has tricked you into believing that being misunderstood is failure. No, being misunderstood by the blind is not failure. It is evidence you are seeing something they cannot. Do you know why they defend their illusion so violently? Because illusion feels safe. Illusion feels familiar. Truth requires the death of who they think they are. And most people would rather protect their identity than expand their consciousness. So when you speak truth, they hear threat. When you speak clarity, they feel danger. When you speak from awareness, their ego prepares for war. They are not listening to understand. They are listening to survive. And you cannot reason with a survival instinct. Look closely at your life. How many times did you find yourself repeating, rethinking, rephrasing, hoping this time the light will flicker in their eyes? But all you saw was the same blank refusal, the same defensive tone, the same rewriting of your words to fit the story they already believed. They don't hear what you say. They hear what they fear. They are not reacting to you. They are reacting to the universe inside their mind. And here is the cosmic joke. You thought your words were bridges, but to them, they were threats. You weren't speaking language. You were disturbing a dream. And dreams do not want to be disturbed. The deeper the illusion, the stronger the denial. So you try harder. Not because you are weak, but because you are sincere. You think sincerity can melt resistance, but sincerity in front of a closed mind is like pouring fresh water into stone. Nothing sinks in. One day, exhaustion arrives not as weakness, but as wisdom. You begin to realize you are not here to drag people into the light. You are not here to convince anyone of who you are. You are here to walk your path and allow those who are ready to walk beside you. There is a strange kind of freedom in letting silence answer, not anger, not retreat. Stillness. A quiet refusal to participate in someone else's hallucination. Because when someone has already decided who you are, explanations are not communication. They are performance, and you owe no one a performance. Some will say your silence is arrogance. Some will say you are avoiding. Some will insist you are guilty simply because you do not defend yourself. Let them Let them narrate you wrong in their private theater. Let them twist your absence into accusation. Let them build illusions with your silence. You do not exist to correct their imagination. You do not exist to play the role they scripted. Once you stop feeding their illusion, you do something radical. You let them meet themselves. And for many people, meeting themselves is unbearable. So they get louder, more dramatic, more accusing. Because the moment you stop arguing, their story trembles. That tremble is not your responsibility. Their discomfort is not your calling. You are not obligated to drag anyone to clarity. You are not required to shrink your truth to soothe someone's fantasies. You do not exist as a mirror for someone afraid to look at themselves. Walk away from the conversation that is not a conversation. It is a trap. Step back from the debate that is not about truth. It is about ego. There is no virtue in drowning to teach someone water is real. Silence is not surrender. Silence is choosing where your soul spends its strength. You are not withdrawing, you are preserving, and in that preservation you begin to taste a deeper kind of power. The power of not needing to be understood, to remain whole. The universe did not put you here to convince the blind to see. It put you here to see. And sight, real sight, is lonely at first, but loneliness is a bridge, not a prison. It leads you toward those who do not need explanations, because they feel truth in frequency, not vocabulary. They don't ask you to translate your soul. They recognize its shape. So breathe. Let the noise echo without you. Let misunderstanding exist without your correction. The ones who are meant to understand will arrive without force, without argument, without you setting yourself on fire. To light their perception, you are not here to open every mind. You are here to evolve yours. And the moment you stop trying to be understood by those who cannot see, you finally begin to see yourself. And yet, even when you learn to walk away, there is a strange ache in your chest, a whisper that says, maybe if I said it differently, maybe if I stayed a little longer, maybe if I tried one more time. That whisper is not wisdom. It is trauma dressed as loyalty. It is the echo of every moment in your life where you believed love had to be earned, where understanding had to be chased, where being seen was a privilege you had to work for. But awareness changes you. It rewrites the architecture of your inner world. You begin to realize that those who require explanation in order to value you will never truly value you. They are not looking at you. They are looking at a version of you their mind has created, and you are merely arguing with a projection. What a tragedy to fight shadows and call it connection.
As you step out of these loops, something extraordinary happens. You begin hearing yourself again.
The voice inside you that was drowned under the noise of trying to prove, persuade, defend, suddenly it returns. It has been waiting for you in the silence you once feared. And that voice is not fragile. It does not tremble with insecurity or desperation. It speaks with the quiet force of someone who finally remembers who they are. It says, you do not need to be understood to be true. You do not need to be validated to exist. And those words are not philosophy. They are liberation. Awakening is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself with fireworks and applause. Awakening arrives like a slow Sioux. Rise inside your mind. First the faintest glow, then a horizon, then a light so inevitable and steady that you forget the world was ever dark. You stop performing. You stop explaining. You stop offering your truth like a fragile artifact for people to handle without reverence. Your mind becomes less like a courtroom and more like a temple. You choose silence not because you lack words, but because your words are sacred, and not everyone has earned the right to hold them. Notice something else. The more aware you become, the less interest you have in convincing anyone of anything. You are no longer a missionary for truth. You are an explorer of it. You don't stand on a podium asking the world to agree. You walk through the unknown with reverence, knowing those who are curious will follow without needing to be pulled. This is the difference between ego communication and conscious communication. Ego wants to win. Consciousness wants to be. Ego demands understanding as proof of existence. Consciousness exists whether anyone understands or not. And you will see clearly now how many people are not in conversation with you. They are in conversation with their past. They speak to old wounds, old fears, old ghosts wearing your face. When you reply, you are not answering them. You are answering a memory they refuse to release. And suddenly the weight you carried lifts. You realize you were never fighting them. You were fighting their unfinished history. There is no victory in that battlefield, only exhaustion, only repetition, only loops disguised as dialogue. So you step away, not with bitterness, not with pride, but with clarity. You do not slam the door. You simply walk through it. And this act, this quiet departure from emotional entanglement, is what frightens people more than anything. Because when you stop explaining yourself, you stop giving them a place to project. You stop feeding the illusion. You stop energizing the narrative. Without your participation, their story collapses under the weight of its own emptiness. Their misunderstanding, once animated by your effort, now sits lifeless. It turns into silence. Silence forces them to meet themselves. Some will rage, some will accuse, some will attempt to drag you back into the theater of argument because your absence exposes their insecurity. They were never debating reality, they were protecting identity. And losing an argument does not threaten identity. But losing an opponent, that is terrifying. Because without someone to resist, they must confront the truth they spent their life running from. They are alone with their thoughts. And the human mind, when forced to sit with itself, begins to tremble. Let them tremble. Your path now bends toward a different kind of conversation. Conversations where curiosity replaces defense. Conversations where presence is more important than winning. Conversations where the soul speaks before the ego can interrupt. You will notice these rare beings instantly. They do not listen to respond, they listen to feel. They do not guard their identity like a fortress. They treat identity as a temporary costume in a vast cosmic play. With them, you do not shrink. You do not bend your expression into digestible fragments. You do not translate your inner universe into small words to avoid being misunderstood. With them, speaking feels like breathing, effortless, natural, sacred. But do not rush to find these people. Do not chase them the way you once chased understanding. They arrive when you no longer need them to. They appear when you become the person who no longer bargains for belonging. You meet them when your energy rises above explanation and enters embodiment. Because the truth is, understanding is not something you earn. It is something you attract by being fully yourself. Still, there will be temptations. There will be moments when the old reflex returns, when you feel the urge to clarify, defend, justify. It is a deep, built over years of seeking approval in a world that rewards conformity more than authenticity. But each time you resist that impulse, each time you choose inner alignment over external validation, your consciousness strengthens. You build spiritual muscle. And one day the reflex dies, not because you suppress it, but because you outgrow it. And once you outgrow the need to be understood, you will notice something else. Your perception sharpens. You begin seeing people not as they present themselves, but as they truly are. You recognize the restless ego hiding behind intellectual arguments. You see the wounded child beneath the aggression. You see the insecurity behind the superiority. You see the fear behind control. And suddenly you stop taking things personally, not as a defense mechanism, but as understanding. You cannot be offended by someone who is struggling to understand themselves. Their misunderstanding becomes almost poetic, like watching someone argue with a mirror. You move through conversations like water moves around stone, not resisting, not forcing, simply flowing. You no longer ask, why don't they understand me? Instead, you ask, why did I ever think I needed them to? You realize that clarity is internal, validation is internal, worth is internal, and communication with the unconscious is optional, not duty. What once felt like abandonment now feels like self-respect. What once felt like silence now feels like sovereignty. And what once felt like losing now feels like returning. There is a moment in every awakening journey where you stop knocking on closed doors and start walking toward open ones. That moment is not dramatic. It does not spark applause. It feels strangely ordinary, like taking a breath after holding it for too long. But in that breath is a lifetime of freedom. You do not rise above others. You rise above the need for them to meet you where they have never been. And in that elevation, life begins to shift. The energy you once wasted in explanation is redirected into creation. The voice you once strained to defend becomes a channel for vision. The spirit you once exhausted trying to be seen begins to radiate even in solitude. Stillness becomes a sanctuary. Solitude becomes a teacher. Silence becomes a friend. And you no longer fear being misunderstood because you now understand yourself. And the real journey begins in the shadows you used to avoid, in the truths you once feared to touch, in the rawness of your own unfiltered existence. Because life does not reward the masked, the edited, the rehearsed version of you. Life responds to the brave one, the one who risks honesty, who steps naked into the world without the armor of appearances, without the desperate need to be understood or validated. When you arrive at that place, a strange calm descends. You begin to realize that the world cannot break you anymore because the world no longer has access to the parts of you that were once fragile. You reclaimed them. You became their guardian. And suddenly, the noise around you no longer dictates your inner climate. You are no longer a puppet to the moods, expectations, and demands of others. You are no longer a prisoner of opinions. You are sovereign again. And sovereignty is the true revolution. It does not roar. It whispers. It whispers in the quiet moments when you look at yourself and realize, I no longer need to be anything other than exactly what I am. The chains fall. The fear loosens. You stop chasing the illusion of acceptance and instead cultivate the rarest form of power belonging to yourself. That is when life begins to bow. Not because you conquered the world, but because you stopped allowing the world to conquer you. You stopped kneeling to the myth that worth must be earned through performance. You stopped chasing approval as if it were oxygen. You finally breathe for yourself, not for anyone watching. The world changes when you do. It bends to the frequency you emit. And when you begin to live from your truth, something extraordinary happens. The artificial parts of your life collapse. The friendships built on convenience crack. The relationships fueled by insecurity dissolve. The environments that thrived on your self-abandonment begin to reject you because you no longer play the role they expect. It can feel like loss, it can feel like destruction, but it is a sacred clearing. It is life making space for a reality that aligns with your evolution. You don't lose people. You lose illusions. You don't lose life. You lose the version that was suffocating you. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Awakening always is. Growth always demands sacrifice. Not of yourself, but of your old identity. You sacrifice the version of you built on survival. The one who smiled when hurting. The one who said yes while drowning. The one who shrank so others could feel big. That self was not weakness. That self was strategy. But now the war has changed. The world you built to protect you has become the world you must break to free yourself. Your nervous system trembles not because you are failing, but because you are expanding beyond what was once possible. This is what evolution feels like. This is what rebirth sounds like. It is the cracking of old bones to grow wings. There will be moments when your mind tries to seduce you back into the familiar. It whispers, go back to who you were. It was easier there. It was safer. But safety is not salvation. Comfort is not peace. Familiarity is not freedom. Remember this. Humans don't stay in cages because they are locked. They stay because they have forgotten they can fly. So whenever doubt creeps in, whenever fear tries to reclaim you, remind yourself gently, it is not the world I am leaving behind. It is the illusion of who I had to be to survive it. And slowly something magnificent awakens, a fierceness, a steadiness, a deep, unshakable center. You begin to walk differently, speak differently. Stop apologizing for existing. You stop bending to fit spaces that stifle you. You stop bleeding for people who never learned how to hold you. You begin to notice your power not in how loudly you can roar, but in how silently you can stand. Power is not aggression. Power is presence. Power is the quiet certainty in your eyes that says, I know who I am now. And once you know who you are, there is no force that can unmake you. This is where life becomes art. You no longer participate in drama because your soul has outgrown chaos. You no longer chase meaning because you have become meaning. You no longer run from solitude because you discovered it is the temple where truth speaks. Silence becomes a friend. Stillness becomes a doorway. You begin to listen not with your ears but with your being. You sense life instead of thinking about it. You stop trying to control. Control was always just fear wearing a mask. Hange energy, not ego. You experience love not as possession or performance, but as recognition. You see others not as roles, but as mirrors. And you finally understand life was never asking you to win. It was asking you to awaken. Awaken not into perfection, but into honesty, into presence, into the raw, unfiltered, unedited state of being alive. There is no destination higher than this. There is no wealth greater than authenticity. There is no power greater than becoming the one thing the world cannot manipulate, yourself. And as you stand in this power, you realize something beautiful. The journey was never about becoming more. It was about unlearning everything that made you forget you were already enough. The universe did not hide truth from you. It hid it inside you. And now you are remembering who you were before fear taught you to shrink. Before the world convinced you that your truth was too loud, too strange, too inconvenient. You are remembering the version of you that existed before you traded wonder for logic, intuition for approval, soul for survival. That self is returning. That self is rising. This is not improvement. This is homecoming. And every step you take from here is not toward a new life, but toward the life that has been waiting for you all along. And you realize the journey was never leading you to some distant mountaintop. It was guiding you back into the throne of your own inner presence. You were never searching for life. Life was waiting for you to stop running long enough to feel it, to see it, to inhabit it, because existence does not bloom for the distracted. It unfolds only for the awake. The ones who dare to look directly at themselves without flinching, without turning away, without apologizing for the gravity of their being. Now the world around you does not suddenly change. You change, and change bends reality. People still talk, but their voices no longer pierce your soul. Demands continue, yet they cannot shake your peace. Life still challenges you. But you no longer interpret friction as failure, nor silence as abandonment. You finally understand circumstances were never the prison. Interpretation was. Your mind was not your enemy. Your unconsciousness was. And consciousness is not a destination. It is a daily remembrance, a sacred discipline of returning to yourself moment after moment, breath after breath. This is the essence of awakening. Not mystical performance, not spiritual theatrics, but the quiet rebellion of choosing presence over panic, truth over illusion, alignment over approval. You are no longer seduced by chaos. You are no longer addicted to the noise of distraction. You no longer crave validation because validation tastes like breadcrumbs compared to the feast of your own self-recognition. You no longer kneel at the altar of external permission because the authority you once projected outward has returned home to the throne of your inner kingdom. You start to notice life moving differently, not because fate suddenly favors you, but because you finally stop betraying your own destiny. The doors you once begged to open are revealed as cages. The people you once chased appear as mirrors of your former insecurity. The approval you once worshipped looks small in the light of your self-possession. You don't walk away with bitterness, you walk away with clarity. You don't leave to prove anything. You leave because your energy doesn't belong there anymore. Growth is not escape, growth is arrival. And you arrived at yourself in this new awareness. You stop trying to fix the world before fixing the gaze through which you see it. You stop trying to save broken systems before learning how to stop breaking yourself to fit them. You stop trying to heal others before learning the art of not abandoning yourself. There is no selfishness in self-honoring. There is only sovereignty. And sovereignty does not scream, it does not boast, it does not beg. It simply is. Quiet, grounded, undeniable. But understand, awakened life is not numb life. Your heart still feels. Your soul still trembles. You still cry, still ache, still bleed. But now, pain does not break you, it opens you. Sadness does not drown you, it deepens you. Fear does not control you, it sharpens you. You do not collapse under emotion, you become the ocean holding every wave. This is emotional freedom. Not the absence of discomfort, but the absence of surrender to it. To feel everything without losing yourself in anything, that is mastery. And mastery does not come with arrogance, it comes with humility. With the understanding that you are not above life. You are within life, learning from its every whisper, every curve, every silence. You surrender not to defeat, but to wisdom. You realize that control was never power, awareness is power, choice is power, presence is power. And the deepest power is the ability to remain yourself in a world constantly trying to shape you into something else. You begin to approach life differently. You move with intention, not impulse. You respond, not react. You think, but no longer drown in thought. You feel, but no longer drown in feeling. You stop confusing urgency with importance, noise with meaning, attention with love. You stop rushing. Rushing is what wounds do, not what wisdom does. You stop proving. Proving is what insecurity does, not what truth does. You stop chasing. Chasing is what the lost do, not what the aligned do. And now alignment is your compass. Silence is your sanctuary. Stillness is your power source. You carry peace not because life became gentle, but because you did the inner work to stop living from fear. You learn to live from the center instead of the edges. You learn that the world outside will always be unstable, but the world within can be unshakable. You learn that storms come not to destroy you, but to reveal the strength of your roots. And as your roots deepen, your life expands, not upward for applause, but inward for truth. You no longer crave spotlight, you crave authenticity. You no longer seek audience, you seek alignment. And interestingly, the more you stop trying to be seen, the more clearly you are seen. The more you release attachment, the more reality flows. The more you stop clinging to control, the more effortless life becomes. You become magnetism instead of effort. You become gravity instead of pursuit. Then comes the final realization, the one that marks true awakening. You were never here to be perfect. You were here to be real. Everything you feared showing was the doorway to everything you longed to become. Every emotion you avoided was a map. Every shadow you denied was a part of your soul calling you home. You do not ascend by rejecting your humanity, but by embracing it with reverence.
This is the paradox. You rise not by transcending life, but by entering it fully. You awaken not by escaping self, but by inhabiting self. You become free not by controlling existence, but by trusting it enough to surrender.
And now you stand at the threshold of a life only few ever touch. The life lived awake, unafraid, unmasked. A life where you do not measure yourself by comparison, but by truth. Where you do not sacrifice your spirit to fit into shallow rooms. Where you walk not as who they trained you to be, but as who you already are beneath the noise. A sovereign consciousness in human form. So let this be your vow, whispered not to the world, but to your own becoming. I will not shrink again. I will not negotiate my worth again. I will not dim my light to soothe another's shadow. I will walk forward not with arrogance, but with certainty, not with ego, but with awareness, not seeking to be liked, but choosing to be real, because I am here to live, fully, fiercely awake, not drifting, but directing, not asleep, but aware, not surviving, but becoming. And as you breathe into this tea, Ruth, feel the shift. This is not confidence. This is identity returned. This is not ego. This is essence remembered. This is not victory. This is awakening. Welcome home to yourself. This is your life now. Claimed, conscious, unbounded, rise, walk, live. Not as the world shaped you, but as the universe intended you. You are free.